Hi everyone. Today we'll look at the access control in databases. Okay. What is access control? Access control is a mechanism to ensure that all direct access to objects are authorized. So it can protect against the accidental, unauthorized access or malicious threats by regulating read, write, and execution of data and programs. So one of the simple access control is your user ID and password, right? Any the database requires the first of all the authentications that database needs to verify who you are. For example, on your MySQL access, then you need to enter the user ID and password only if they are matched, then MySQL allow you to come into the database shell. And it is very common that the database access is very common. For example, when you access your banking systems, then it's nothing but that you want to access into the database, the banking database. But the user interface is web-based. So in the web, ask you to enter login ID and password. Then take your input to go to one small the authentication, the middleware module to verify who you are. And if it is needs to verify another tier of authentication, we call that a multi-factor or two-factor authentication. Then it asks you to enter, or it not only it checks what you know, but it wants to check whether you really are communicating between the system and you, so that system send out some of the messages to a designated device that you already registered. And then the banking system, for example, trust that you still hold the device that you registered in the banking systems. What if you lose what you possess? And what if you released what you know? Two things: what you possess and what you know. Two things are verified by two-factor authentication, right? What you know is your login ID and password. What you possess is your device. It's less likely that you lose both of those, but it's not impossible to lose both of those anyway, right? Therefore, these days, not only two-factor, maybe multi-factor authentications. But anyway, all such things needs to be defined in a way that we need to have some of the policies. And the way that we enforce this policy, that is the mechanisms. Access control mechanism and access control policy. Policy is like a rule or somehow some descriptions. It may tell what you can do or you cannot, right? Mechanism is how that policy can be enforced. So first we think of the policies. In the access control policy, we need to consider three components: subjects, who take on actions; objects. If subject is defined, then that subjects would like to do against what objects. For example, subject is maybe a user or some program. Object could be a record in a table or table itself or some file. and and then there is a somehow action or access right or the privileges. So what kind of actions that you allow or disallow? Are you going to allow a subject as to read? Read is an action on object O, or write. Read and write is simply one of the basic operation that a database may take, and also operating systems as well. But could be more, right? Maybe increment of salary or decrement. There's a more than write, more than read. So many different actions may be allowed. What some of the real the codings, programs, right? Procedures. There could be the privileges. At this moment, I want you to recall one of the hands-on exercises on our MySQL. Remember that when we create user, and if a user account is successfully created on my database, then next thing that we have to do is to grant the privileges, right? So that grant of privileges, that language has this three things already specified. For example, grant. And then the one that we looked at was all privileges, right? Then this is really all privileges. But could it be one specific actions like select? Select is an action in database, or delete, or drop, insert. All those things are what? Access right. This is an action. And then we say on star dot star, right? Star dot star. It could be your database, for example, 525 DB dot student table. This is a table. This is a database. Different granules, right? You can do 525 DB dot star. Then any tables within that database will be on objects that we are trying to grant a specific the privileges. So grant privileges on objects. So this is an objects. Star dot star. And the next language is to And then we can say Jaeyoon at, say, localhost. Then this is the subject, right? So we actually, in this, the database language, we already followed these rules, access control rules. We specified objects and subjects and actions, right? Next slide trying to show to you the granule of these objects. Okay, these actions, there's a limited, right? Database actions, that is a program, that is an implementation, it's already defined. And subjects, that is also defined. Subject needs to be first created in our database language that we did create user and username, right? So action and subject we already defined. Now let's consider the objects. So protection objects hierarchically shows different granules. At large, maybe entire database. Since database is a collection of a relation is nothing but a table. So this is table. When we describe the access control policy, then we can give the privileges to a specific person to come in the database, but not all the tables in my database. That's possible, right? So students can come in the university database, but not the payroll database, or not some sensitive database. Table is a collection of records. So we can think of, let's say, students can come in university database and even further to student table, but a student cannot read any records in that student table, but only the records that authorized to that specific students. In other words, I can access my data, but I cannot see my friend's database, although me and my friends together in the same table, same relation, in the same database, and therefore I could have, for example, the university database, the dot student table. I have a read select the privileges according to this. If that privileges is granted to me, then I am able to access anyone in my student table, which may not be really a good access control, right? So this database language is not enough to do all the access control. This is a basic. This kind of the language is a basic, but not really handling the access control in subtle ways. What is the primitive level of the access controls? If we consider that, then the database, the command line language may not be enough. So we have to consider even further, right? So at the relation levels, database and relation levels, we can handle this uh, by database language. But when we go even further in detail levels, then whole different procedures and mechanisms needs to be employed. For example, record. Even if I am allowed to read one record, there may be the case that specific attributes are not allowed for me to read or not allowed for me to write. Student record, then there may be a GPA. My GPA there, I can read it, but I should not. I'm not allowed to write on it, not override it, right? So specific attributes may not be permitted for me to write. But for example, my address or phone number, then that attributes can be rewritten by me, right? So even for the elements, so different granules needs to be considered. Relation levels, so then we need to consider all of this table or attribute levels, if that is record a table like this, but then only specific attributes not allowed. Tuple levels, some tuples allowed. For example, if my name is Dale, then I may be able to read my data, but not others. Cell levels, I can, for example, read some cell by cell. I can read this, and I can read that, I can read this. So that is the cell levels, granularities. Even harder to implement if we consider that way, right? The easier to control is the case when an object is only database level or table levels. But record levels, attribute levels, or any arbitrary cell levels, then they're all definitely the coding skill is required. So you have to use the language, programming languages. By the way, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a couple of weeks, then we need to do the codings. We looked at the basic concepts and skill sets of databases. The next step that we have to do is, how can you code? How can I include SQL statements in my coding? Therefore, my database management will be much more powerful. Okay, we can control. We can do not only, for example, SQL language. It's very easy for us to describe because we simply say what we want, right? Like a baby usually ask mom what I want. Easier to express. But when that baby grows, and when it becomes a teenager, then the teenager boy or girl needs to describe even more detailed ways, like procedural languages. Not only what I want, but hey mom, can I put a little more spicy pizza pie, but it should be thin. Size is something. I want to put some toppings, and the way of cooking can be also described by the teenager boys or girls, right? So a little more procedural ways. Likely, the techniques that you learn from this class, not only SQL language, not only describing what we want, but we want to describe, include that in my codings, how we can cook it, right? So we need to cook for different taste. That is coming soon. Table levels and database levels. So already we looked at, we have a subject and some of the objects, and then there is access policy. Wait a minute. Yeah. Subject could be user or role. By the way, MySQL does not allow us to specify role, but if you are working on Oracle, then even me as a user, the way that I can access database at one time, I can access as arbitrary user. At another time, I want to access me, myself, same person, but in different role. Hey, I want to access the same database, but in the capacity of, for example, a professor or administrator. So idea here is we have a policy information, policy repositories, and see here a policy repository holding all authorized policy, policy administrations, user interface, and policy information points. It provides policy data to the decision or enforcement points, policy decision points, and policy evaluation engine. So this policy evaluation engine sits here. So when application and user wants to access, then finally this decision maker will decide whether you are allowed or not allowed. Access control policies, in general, three ways of those: discretionary access control or mandatory access control, role-based access control. Let's first start with the mandatory access controls. The idea here is this. Mandatory access control comes originally from military. So documents in military can be classified in multiple different layers. We can say top secret documents, or confidential documents, or non-classified documents. So documents has different security levels, like here, classifications, right? Subject has also different security clearance, like top secret clearance, confidential clearance, or nothing cleared. Top secret clear, the soldier who has a top secret clearance are able to access top secret documents and any lower levels from there, right? So that type of things. So top secret clearance is top secret documents. Top secret clearance is the top levels, and little lower levels are secret, and actually confidentials and unclassified. That is the military cases. It depends on the way that we describe. In this case, the 3 levels, or in military, then we have a confidential. And then unclassified. Okay, this is very critical in military. Access rights defined by comparing the security classification of the request objects with the security clearance of the subjects. Subject has a security clearance, should have, right? So when I was military, I was in yeah some so I had the top secret clearance. So I had I am able to access top secret documents. Even so, when I hold top secret clearance, top secret documents, then I need to handle that documents in a limited, restricted area, where there is called Tempest security zones, and we make documents, and the documents may be read by lieutenant general or major general, because I was working. Yeah, my unit was in that levels. I'm just enlisted, but my boss, my top boss, was lieutenant general, and then he needs to report all the way to the 8th United States Army. But anyway, the, so, and there is an access control rule. If access control rule is satisfied, then access is permitted, otherwise rejected, right? That is mandatory access control. We call that MAC. Okay. The other way is discretionary access controls. This is a little more complicated. So it has three triple components: subject, object, and access mode. Either plus or minus. Plus means granted, minus was revoked. So example is subject black can access, in this case, read. So black can read employee relations. Okay, so this kind of things, policies needs to be defined first, right? This is not really a problem, but we have to think of the propagations. For example, if I have the privileges of all the privileges, then I can also grant the privileges to other peoples, right? So when my privilege is revoked, then how can you do to the privileges that I granted while I was permitted to do that? But at the time of the revocation, then are we going to cascade to revoke all of those? That is one policy, right? Another policy could be we stop there. So different mechanisms needs to be defined, and enforcement of the mechanism enforcement may be different. That all such things needs to be defined. Okay. That is the realities in the real world domain. For example, the secretary of one department, that person may be mishandled and then may be fired. But while that person was in that administration, that person granted the privileges to subordinates. Then should we revoke it? Should we cancel that the privileges? So a lot of cancellations, right? When you see it in America, the new president is elected, then the first day a lot of cancellations. But anyway, that type of things is revocations. Propagations is when new president comes, then the privileges is given to the subordinates. Then chief of the subordinates also grant the privileges to the subordinates, and it propagates all the way down to at certain points, right? So real world, the privileges, chain of privileges, mechanisms or enforcement also implemented in the information access controls. Access control informations, I mean, the implementation is in this way. We have files and capability list here. Jar can read file 1, Jar can read and write file 1, and also own, but file 2, Jar can read only. File 2 is owned by Sam. So this kind of things needs to be, let's say this is somehow the policies, then we can generate this kind of tables, right? We can see very simply, hey, file 1 can read Joe, let's say as far as file 1, Joe can read and writes. As far as file 2, Joe can read here, all others maybe by Sam's. More clearly that we can see that. So discretionary access control, the grant privileges and revoke privileges. So in this way, Brown owner grant the select on employee to black with the grant options, so that grant option means black can also grant even further. So the black grant the select on employee to red, and also brown grant updates on the employee white, right? On object employee to white. Brown revoked the grant. Then what should we do? So black is out from here. Then what about this guy? Cascading effect, or we leave it, or this guy can directly make another statement. All different things possible, right? Everything is possible, but needs to be defined, specified. Access control mechanisms, of course, our target is on objects. So security through stored objects, or security through views, that is also possible. We can say directly to a specific object, like table or records or some field. This is a base table. The similar security policies can be enforced against view. View is like virtual relations or procedures. If we want to take some actions based upon the procedures. Procedures can be, hey, you can run my database, my program, but the other guy cannot run my program. That is also possible, right? So for example, in order to do that, we need to create view, right? Then this outstanding students, that also we can control the access. Who can read outstanding students? Who cannot? Right? Not only specific object student table, but once we generate a view, create view, this is kind of virtual. This is a virtual table. This is actually base table. Virtual table and base table. If we consider the views for access control, then that is much easier than directly to the base tables. Why? Because the way that we generate the view, we can design it. We can include the access control in this language. For example, in the where clause, not only that, we can put and owner is James only. Then owner James can read only James owned outstanding students, right? If we can add this clause automatically to the given view specifications, this type of automatic addition to the given the view creation is available in Oracle databases. We call that private virtual database. This is, if we were thinking of the procedures, then the same thing. We can do grant to run on program to user. This is very similar to the way that we are talking about stored objects, right? Then we say grant certain privileges on certain objects to a user. This is actually that we did, right? Grant to select on students, select everything, grant to select everything and updates on students, grant to select name only on students to Brown. Revoke is once we grant the privileges, then anytime that we can revoke it. Revoke, select star on students from particular user. Revoke update on students from black. Revoke students. Revoke select this attribute, a specific attribute on students from brown. Yeah. So this kind of revoke and grant that we already did, I think a couple of weeks ago. So we are not going to do any additional hands-on, but this kind of the review that you already issued, but more theoretically, we can think of a database as access control mechanisms. It has basically two things: mandatory access control or discretionary access controls. The third one, I didn't include that here in this module. That is a role-based access control. This role-based access controls. Remember that in Oracle, it allows, or we have to specify not only user ID, but the role. At time one, the same person can access database as arbitrary user, but at time two, the same person wants to access the same database in different role. There's a role-based access control. Okay. All right. This is it. Thank you. I'll see you next week. Bye.